Hello everyone and welcome to the Global Business Podcast Show. I'm your host Mark Philpott, and on today's show I have another really interesting guest for you all. So imagine for a minute that you're flying around the world in front of a camera all the time, getting photos taken of you in some of the most idyllic places on this planet, and then all of a sudden overnight it comes to a screaming halt. That's what happened for my guest today, as he is working in a very interesting industry. Let's go over and meet him now and find out all about it. So it's a really warm welcome to the Global Business Podcast today to Mr. Shaun Birley. Shaun, thanks for joining me.
It's great to be here, Mike.
How are you today, mate?
Doing really good. I'm in tropical Queensland right now, so it's a beautiful, about 22, 23 degree day, so I can't complain about the weather.
So for people listening all over the world, we're having a very nice, what they call winter here at the moment in this part of the world, and it's not too bad, is it, Shaun?
No, it's pretty good, mate. I had a discussion with a couple of friends this morning, and they've woken up to a 6 degree Melbourne morning, so I'm not complaining.
Now, you're a pretty fit guy. Did you get out for a workout this morning?
I got up for a cycle, went out with my crew of lads and did a 50k cycle, so that was my morning routine.
Now, you just told me before we started getting on air today that you've just recently come across the world of cycling. How are you finding it?
It's pretty good, mate. It's pretty addictive. I jumped in with a couple of guys who are ex-cyclists as well, who've currently re-picked up the sport. So I've jumped in and pretty much got all the gear and trying to get more of an idea of what it's like. But yeah, I've got the Lycra, I've got the bike. I'm all on it. So and the addiction is real.
Okay, good. I know a lot of guys that spend more time at coffee shops when they're cycling than they do actually cycling. So let's see how you go on that one. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about business today on the show, and I thought I'd start off by giving you some time to talk to my listeners about what it is you actually do that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so I'm in I guess what you would probably describe as a fairly new and upcoming industry. It's got some solid foundations now, but I work mainly in the travel and social media world, kind of blogging, but mainly social media at the moment. So that comes down to like generating content for brands globally at the moment, focusing on a personal style, focusing on kind of things that I like to talk about. And social media is a pretty big space and it appeals to a lot of people out there, but my main focus and drive is creating engaging content for brands that they can reuse.
So do you label yourself as an influencer per se?
Yeah, I would say an influencer. It's developed from an influencer now to kind of like a very much a small boutique marketing agency. Now we sit down with the brand. Yes, sometimes I'm majority of the time the product behind the brand and wearing it, but a lot of it we come up with the creative concepts and stuff around whatever the brand might be. But yes, probably an influencer is probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, I think that, as you said in the beginning, it is a new industry, and I guess that there has a lot of upside, and there's a lot of labeling and judgment going on around the world about influencers, because
Yep.
the notion is by a lot of people, and I know it's incorrect in a lot of instances, that these people with video cameras are trying to run around the world and get free hotel room nights and free food and everything else. But it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There are people that are definitely trying to take advantage of that. There is definitely a mutual benefit when someone has that audience and someone's looking for, more traction, more engagement, more volume to whatever the business may be. But it's the way that I've set it up with our team is it's become a bit more of a complex beast.
What made you decide to get into this industry?
Well, actually, I actually wasn't planning on getting into it, actually. I had started another business about 7 years ago. Couldn't afford an office. I couldn't afford to work from somewhere just because I was just starting it up with my business partner. So we worked from coffee shops around Sydney at the time when we were based out of Sydney. And it was very much a sales-driven company. So we would start at a different coffee shop every morning. From there, I was wearing a pretty much different suit every day, and my business partner would take the camera and get a shot of me having a coffee in a different suit combination. Then the content just slowly evolved from there.
Wow, so it all starts at a cafe.
It all started from a cafe. Yeah, people were intrigued about where the coffee shop that I was drinking at, and then also just who and what I was wearing.
Very interesting. How long did it take for some traction to occur when you started posting those photos online?
You know, there was no real traction at the beginning, and I think what happened, it just became the content was really consistent. Then started gaining traction, and then at the very beginning, actually, none of the photos contained my head, so there was this bit of a mystery. It was from my chin down. You saw the suit, the pocket square, and the tie, or the coffee shop, and then I started kind of peeling back that mystery and just taking photos of myself as well. And then eventually it just started to grow and grow and grow and grow, and people were tagging themselves in my photos, and it just slowly chipped away at it and just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
So how long ago was this when you started this?
It's about 4 years now, yeah.
Okay, well that's a good period of time to really test out, and we'll find out shortly where you've got with it all. Mm-hmm. How did you decide upon the niche in the particular space that you're working in? How did you come across that?
Well, I just kind of realized that Australia didn't really have a big influence when it came to men's fashion. And I also thought Australian men didn't really have sort of that European flair to fashion. I can quite often wear some pretty eccentric stuff and stuff that's pretty out there, and it just photographs quite well as well most of the time. So I just kind of went out there with my fashion and just kept taking photos of sort of the stuff that I love to wear, and eventually I just think I found a niche of people that also had the same appreciation for that European fashion that was a bit left of field.
So you're telling me that the old flip-flops and the Victoria Bitter singlet are not going to cut it anymore?
Maybe off the Instagram when there's no cameras around, I might dabble in that on the beach somewhere. But Monday to Friday and shorts and over the weekends, no, mate, you won't catch me in those.
Look, I'm glad you raised it, because I think having lived myself a long time in Europe as well, and recently come back to Australia, it's something that you do notice. Australian cuisine has gone ahead in leaps and bounds over the years, but it seems as though fashion got a little bit left behind. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. We've got a lot of emerging designers here, but nothing really that's captivating the world in terms of in the men's market as well. The women's seems to dominate. They do really well. Small brands out of Byron Bay, Melbourne, and Sydney are killing it in the US and Europe as well. In fact, you see most of their volumes go overseas more than actually sold here in Australia. But when it comes to men, we're very much into just our block color suiting, not big wide lapels or anything like that, and pretty safe shoes. The corporate attire here is very sort of standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you decided to go down this particular path, did you find out there was anybody else in that space in Australia trying to do the same thing, or did you basically get a monopoly on this one?
Yeah, so when I started, a lot of the guys that I looked up to and the guys that I sort of looked at in the US and Europe and said, like, these guys are the guys that I like, there wasn't anyone in Australia doing sort of what they were doing and wearing the things that they were wearing. So that's when I kind of discovered that Australia, there was a bit of that gap for somebody like that to put themselves into. So yeah, I mean, I do admit a lot of the stuff that you see me wear does come from have been inspired from overseas looks, and again, just wearing them here domestically.
Yeah, right. And I guess we have a unique, and it's funny you're talking about this, because I've just got a fashion designer in the US that's come on board with me, who's going to create a fashion look for me and my podcast show, because I'm going into video world soon, so it's going to be a bit more upbeat. Perfect. And it was really interesting talking to him, because he had no idea what Australian fashion was like for men.
Yeah.
He said, what do you guys wear there? And I thought, yeah, what an interesting question. He doesn't even know what the fashion label of men in Australia is, so...
Well, yeah. I mean, you also have to think about like Sydney, Melbourne to Brisbane. I mean, those three cities all have three different, very, very different climates. Yeah. I think people as well, personality-wise, they're three different personalities. So Melbourne's very European. Sydney and Brisbane are a bit warmer. You find people here up in Queensland don't tend to have big thick coats and things like that, and they stick to more of the lightweight linens and things like that as well.
I bet you they have the last few mornings, mate. I'm sure they're putting on a thick coat.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people on the outside would say, okay, being one of these influencers on social media is all about being, glamorous in front of the camera, but there's a lot more to it. Can you run us through what a typical day in the life of an influencer would be, say, pre-COVID-19? Because we know it's changed a lot, and we'll get into that shortly.
Sure. So a lot of the times we sit down, I actively pitch to brands as well, and we also receive briefs around sort of the content that brands are looking for. I also have a team of people here with me, a photographer, a videographer, a web developer, and someone also who does a lot of ghostwriting for me as well on the website. So at any given time, actually, there's a team of 5 of us.
Mm-hmm.
When we sit down, we sort of content plan throughout the week. We try to mix it up between both paid opportunities and non-paid opportunities. So that'll be sitting down saying, okay, we've got a brief for an alcohol company, a fashion company, and maybe a hotel. Those would be sort of sponsored posts, and we look to say, okay, we're going to provide 20 high-res images plus a video per brand, and we'll try to sit throughout the week and figure out where we're going to shoot and plan those. And then, of course, you don't particularly want your social media, whatever your platform may be, just to be consistently paid promotions. So it's important to sort of balance that between lifestyle shots and things that you personally find interesting. So a lot of the time in between those paid opportunities, we sit down and just try to create some lifestyle content that just fills up in between the paid posts. So throughout the week, throughout the month, we just sit down, we sort of plan, come up with some creative ideas behind the product or the service, and as well as look around, see where we can look at locations as well, and also ideas for articles.
Yeah, right. How did you bring this team together? Were these friends? Were they people that you had in your inner circle? How did that come about?
Yeah, from the beginning, when it started getting busier, I started to look for photographers. I worked with maybe 5 or 6 throughout the place of a year when it really started getting busy. Sort of narrowed it down to 1. Then when it started moving into more video content as well, the same thing. I went out and recorded with a bunch of videographers down till I got to somebody that I felt really comfortable in front of camera with as well. And then same with the blogging side of it all. I just actually we had a lot of interns. I requested from was it a couple of universities here in Queensland, and we had a couple of applications, and then one girl just stood out, and now she's on board part-time as well.
Interesting. So for people out there listening today who are starting off a small business, what tips would you give them about recruiting and finding the right people for your business?
Yeah, I think is trying a variety of people as well. And I mean, if you are in the influencer space, especially this type of world, I think it's really important to have a really good relationship with the person that's holding the camera as well. They also promote creativity. There's definitely a big difference between being on set and on location with somebody who's really proactive and really engaging behind the camera. It makes the experience a lot more fun, and also I think that element of fun then carries over into the content that you create as well, and it becomes a lot more natural.
Yeah. Seen a lot of your photos online where you're outside doing stuff and doing photo shoots. How long does it take to put something like that actually together?
It all depends, really. Sometimes, for instance, last week we shot a campaign for Ralph Lauren. That was probably a 2-hour drive into the mountains. We learned to look for something. They wanted a winter autumn vibe, so we needed to find a cottage in the hills with a lake and sort of that orangey sort of autumn leaf look. So that took a while looking for that sort of stuff. But then when you're up there, it may only take us an hour or two to really shoot, but then we need to sit down, edit, and then send it off to the brand for approval. So that process there can take anywhere between 4 to 5 hours, and then some shoots depending on the size of the campaign. We did one with Land Rover and Shell, which took 4 days,
right?
Because we had to use the full tank of petrol, and the whole vlog was about how far we could get on this one tank of this diesel in a Land Rover. So it varies from job to job.
Now, you talked about this whole influencer industry being relatively new. So now that you're in it, what do you see as the end game? Where does this go? Like, how long do you do this for? What do you want to get out of it in the end? And is it something you can do for decades or what?
Yeah, I know. I think it's just like any other business, it's really important to adapt as well. I think, if you're really putting all your concentration and energy into one platform, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So I think it's really important to start diversifying the forms of social media and trying to get your audience to shift from different platforms as well. But majority of mine is on Instagram, but I know there's been a lot of demand from followers to move to YouTube and also to start doing podcasts as well. So I think that just like any other business, I think you just got to diversify, you got to change. And I think if you've got your finger on the pulse and you're willing to change and change the type of content that you're creating, then I think you can do it for a very, very long time, yes. But I think if you stick to one thing and you don't adapt, then eventually that platform could die out. You're just creating a bit more risk.
Innovate or die, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. So interesting, you talked about podcasting. Is this your first podcast show as a guest?
This is my first podcast. Yeah, I've got 2 more this week, and I have got one. This is the first one, and 2 more to come.
Okay, brilliant. Well, enjoy the journey because it's a fascinating world, and I think it's going to be one of the most outstanding mediums going forward because it's so flexible for people to be able to get their hands on this content. And there's 30 million episodes of podcasts out there in the world today, so there's something for everybody.
There's a great variety, and I just love being able to. I mean, for instance, your one, just being able to download it all, jump on a flight last week, and just listen to 2 or 3 as I sat there on the plane on the way to Melbourne.
Yeah, it's easy stuff. Now let's talk about that nasty virus that came to town because it shifted the business world in a lot of different areas. And tell us first of all, how did it impact what you actually do on a daily basis when I guess COVID came and the lockdown started to come into place? What happened to your business?
Well, at the beginning, like we were discussing before, I was mainly in the fashion industry, but again, the content that I've been working on has adapted now into the tourism industry. So we've been doing a lot overseas, and I've just finished 2 jobs with Visit Park City in USA, and we just did a huge campaign over in Nepal for Visit Nepal 2020, and that's a global campaign. We went over and shot that. Now we shot both those jobs. One was 10 days, the following was 7. I came back here, then they'd stopped international travel, and pretty much all the jobs that we had just done, they said that please put this on the back burner. There's no point in us promoting this anymore because nobody can travel. And then the jobs that I had coming up, we had a job with Tourism Hawaii and a couple other travel jobs, and they've just been, I don't know whether they've been cancelled or they've been postponed. But right now, I've had 11 jobs over Q2 been probably cancelled. So I had a big schedule traveling for 2020, and now I've been in one place for the last 3 months.
So did this trajectory downwards, did it happen overnight or did it happen over a few weeks?
Yeah, it's I could slowly see it unraveling, to be fair. It was over the first couple of weeks. First, the international jobs were cancelled, especially in places that were really being affected, especially like Italy and Spain. I was off to Milan Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, and Paris Fashion Week, which was it was June, July. So those were cancelled. And then you start slowly to see countries that weren't as affected by the virus slowly start to drop off as well. And then the jobs domestically here dropped off. So it was about 1 month, but you could slowly see things just slowly start to disappear.
Yeah, amazing. I guess, hindsight's a great thing. So if we go back pre-COVID-19, there would be no thought process in your mind that something like this would impact your industry, right?
Absolutely nothing. Couldn't have predicted it.
So when it did happen and you started getting those emails and phone calls from the brands that you're working with, how did it affect you personally? How did you deal with it?
Personally, just for my love for travel and for the love of what I do, that was pretty hard to stomach just because I was really keen on traveling,
Mm.
and so was the photographer and videographer I was traveling with. Then that was the financial impact. It was like, well, I'm gonna have to start to look at alternative ways to generate some income over the next 3 months as well. And then these articles started coming out a couple of months ago saying, "Is this the death of the influencer?" So those were a bit concerning at the beginning. I thought there was gonna be some tough times ahead, but it hasn't been that bad, to be honest.
I've also seen articles saying, "Is this the death of politics?" as well. So you're not alone, mate.
Yeah.
So the social media influencer community, is it a close-knit community? Like, are you there collaborating with each other and helping and supporting each other through times like this?
This is a really good question because, again, I think the industry changes quite a lot in Europe and the US and then Australia if you compare all three, because that's where I feel kind of they're the three big dominant influencer areas. US, they do a great deal with each other, from trips away, they do campaigns together, and they'll also do YouTube podcasts and things together, right? Same in Europe. Australia just doesn't have that culture as much as it does. It does a little bit, but not as much. People are very much here, have grown their profile, they've grown sort of their audience, and I feel as if they're pretty they're protective of it. So I don't know if that's an Australian thing, but yeah, a lot of them don't tend to share their audience, which is, I think, a really good strategy to grow your business, to be honest. But it's just not something that's common practice.
Yeah, I find it really fascinating because, as I said to you just a while ago, I've had a fashion designer out of the US contact me and wanted to collaborate on my podcasting. I thought, wow, what a creative, innovative idea, right? In terms of, getting me to sit in front of a camera talking to a microphone, wearing his fashion label and using that as another way of branding his product to the world in these difficult times where he can't have models going up and down runways at different fashion shows around the world.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great way to share the audience and also just to continue that discussion online as well. Just having other people with big followings, even if it's from podcast to Instagram or Instagram to YouTube. But I think it's really important to share that audience and keep everybody engaged online.
I think going back to the point you raised about Australia and the close-knit community, I think the population size has a lot to do with it. As you know, when you're working in the United States and Europe, there's a massive amount of people across lots of different opportunities. And I think that protectionism in Australia in business comes from the size of the population, I think.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
So you've mentioned that travel has been a huge part of your business and what you've been doing. Now that we're starting to see slowly, restrictions being lifted, what do you see as the short-term future as far as travel domestically, first of all, in Australia, and then what are the predictions for you internationally?
Yeah, so domestically, I think right now I'm going to focus on creating content mainly based around Queensland. I mean, we do have it's such a beautiful state and we have such a beautiful country here in Australia. I just don't think I've explored it as much as I wanted to as well. And I think this is a great opportunity to now start to share some of the locations and holidays that people can have right here in their backyard. Whether that's paid or unpaid, I don't mind. I'm pretty keen to go out and explore. So for me, I think domestically, this is a great opportunity for Australians to explore Australia. Depending on how things go with the second wave in Victoria, I think it's important that we get out and start to inject a bit of money into some of the smaller communities as well that rely on tourism. So that's kind of my direction moving forward. And then when it comes to the international side, I don't know. I think based on what I've been reading from Qantas and some of the airlines, that they don't think things are going to go back to normal potentially until 2021, June, July next year. So I'm mentally bracing myself, and I've accepted that the next year, starting from this month, is that it's going to be mainly focusing on domestic content, domestic travel, and really showing off what we have here in our backyard.
Yeah, interesting statistic I read the other day that more Victorians have been to Bali for a holiday than they have to Queensland.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There's actually so many Australians. We were having this discussion the other night, and there's so many Australians who just choose to fly to Queenstown, Bali, Asia,
Hmm.
and especially come these months right now, June, July, especially with the younger generation of like let's say between 35 and 20. A lot of these people save up and just head to do the European summer, Greece, Italy, Spain, then come back.
Hmm. So have the brands that you've been working for, you mentioned that you're on a shoot the other day, so obviously some brands are still going forward and doing things with you. Are there a handful of those, or is there a couple of them? What's happening there?
Yeah, so what I mean, there was a lag when all those the domestic and international travels were being cancelled. Then there was a whole bunch of articles saying, is this the death of the influencer? No one can travel, no one can do anything. But and then there was a period there where it was really quiet, Mark, and I was a little bit concerned about what was going to happen.
Hmm.
But in that period, what I found out, my manager who does all the negotiation with the brands and stuff as well, she was saying that all they were doing was they needed time to rejig their marketing budgets. So what they were doing was they were pulling money from outdoor. They were pulling money from experiential advertising. They were doing from events and launches. And actually, they started pulling all this budget from all these different advertising avenues and dumping it straight into digital. They wanted people doing at-home content. So about a month later, after that all sort of stopped, all these brands really started surfacing with um, more money that they had allocated now into social media and wanting people to do at-home content or domestic content, from having making a cocktail at home, or using a vacuum cleaner to clean your house. But yeah, no, it actually picked up. It got busy. People are still looking to digital. Um, the statistics are, I mean, TikTok has just exploded during COVID. People's attention right now are in their phones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's actually, there was a lull, but it's busy again.
Interesting. I've seen exactly the same or experienced exactly the same thing on the podcast thing. My numbers have gone through the roof for downloads around the world since COVID
Awesome.
came along, and that's because people are looking for content and entertainment, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So, I mean, not being able to go out. I know, like we sit here and we put on dinner now. We don't put on TV that often. If
Mm.
we do, it's on demand. It's on Netflix.
Mm.
Other than that, we put on a podcast whilst we cook dinner, or we'll listen to Spotify. But again, I think it just broadly comes to on-demand content and people wanting to go on Instagram and see what other people are doing. Um, that falls into that realm as well.
I think what's really interesting, there's a couple of things you've just raised there, I think, which are really interesting. And if you're out there and you're a small business and you've had your clients cut you off or downtrade or whatever at the moment, what you just mentioned is really paramount. Your customers, so to speak, your brands that you're working for, they're having to reinvent their business at the moment, and they're using all sorts of different strategies to come up with new marketing approaches. So the best piece of advice there is reach out to them and find out, understand what they're doing with their business. Just because they're not giving you anything right now doesn't mean that the door's not going to be open again soon, Shaun, right? So really understanding what the brands are doing to recreate themselves and re-engineer in this new world we're about to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that right now brands are probably looking for new innovative ways to create content.
Mm.
And there are some incredible content creators that are doing things at home or just outside or in their backyard that's pretty engaging as well. I think you'd be able to get bang for buck as well, rather than going to somebody who is marketing agency. You can go off and reach out to some of these content creators who will be able to create you something at a fraction of the price that's far more engaging in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's so much that's happening at the moment that is so innovative that if worst case scenario, it gives you great ideas for your own business. A question I have for you, Shaun, is what have you learnt, or what are you still learning about yourself as a business person during this time? How has your whole, I guess, mentality towards business changed or innovated during this particular time?
Yeah, I think it's just changing the type of content that I've been creating as well, and I just feel like, I never thought that people were interested at home content, or they were interested in the stuff that is happening just in my world in Queensland. But the thing is, everyone's at home and everyone's interested about what's happening in other people's places around home. So I actually have learned that I don't need to go traveling to create good content. I don't need to go do and work with luxurious brands to go do something that's engaging for somebody to say, oh, that's quite cool. But you can actually go off and do stuff and create some really fun stuff domestically that's still really engaging and fun. That element can be quite challenging when you're sitting down in a room with my videographer and photographer, and we're sitting there going, okay, we need to do something domestically in our backyard again. What can we do? So it's for me, it's more of a challenge around creating and being creative in a smaller space.
Yeah, cool. Have you got any of the Australian bicycle manufacturers on board yet?
Not yet, mate. Not yet. I need to get these legs a bit strong before I start posting.
Lycra and sunglass companies. Look out! Here comes Shaun Birley.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's kind of what I've learned at the moment.
So just a little bit of a dark cloud conversation for 1 second. You think there's going to be a lot of carnage coming out the other side of this as far as influencers go? Do you think we're going to lose a lot of influencers that are in the game today that won't be there when things open up again?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question, and this is a good one. So when things go back to normal, I think we're going to be inundated with work when it comes from tourism to fashion, travel, people wanting to get out and explore. There's going to be, I think there's going to be a large demand. But what I think COVID has really done, it's really differentiated a lot of content creators and influencers and people who work in the social media space from the good to the bad, right? Brands are now kind of wanting to work with the people who create content that can be reused on their platform. Then you also have these influencers who just create photos with their iPhones. It's really basic. And yeah, they may have a really large following, but a lot of these brands now are working with people who are creating really good stuff. And I think they're the people who come out the other end are going to be sort of bang for buck and ROI. Once things get busy again, these are the people they're going to go to because of the type of creative, high quality content that they've created. Those people are going to be rise to the top, I think, when we come out of this.
Yeah, interesting. I've seen some couple of fairly high profile travel destinations come out and say they're actually going to pay part of travelers' airfares to get them to go there after the restrictions are lifted. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Sicily is one of them in Italy. Sicily
really?
has said it's going to pay 50% of an airfare of a traveller who wants to go there and have a holiday in the future.
Now, is that just anybody, or is that
anybody across the board?
Really?
Yeah.
Gee, that's unreal. I did see that Dubai has reopened. They've said that they obviously come through because they've got their world show, right? The Dubai 2020 coming through.
Yeah.
But I don't know what some of these countries are going to do, but that the 50% airfare cost, that's pretty attractive.
And there was another one in Croatia. I can't remember exactly what the city was. It wasn't a well-known destination in Croatia, and I think Uzbekistan came out the other day and also said that they would pay X amount per person if you actually caught COVID-19 while traveling in their country as a tourist.
Wow.
So we're seeing a completely new travel landscape, aren't we, unfolding around the world?
Yeah, and I think it's just it's a real push to get travel back to normal, right? But I mean, for somebody, for me, someone offering me a 50% discount on airfares to go to Italy and eat pasta and pizza like in Sicily and drink Aperol spritzers and red wine, it's a pretty good bargain to me.
You'll be the first at the airport, will you?
I will be.
On the other side, what impact do you think this whole journey is going to have on the brands that you work with? What do you think the landscape's going to be for them going forward?
For the brands? Oh, wow, that's a good question.
What are you anticipating? Have you seen any signs of significant changes in their strategies for the near future?
I just think a lot of people have just shifted a lot of their, like I was saying before, when it comes down to where they're spending their advertising spend. I think we've, as a country or as a globe, have really now shifted our sort of consumer and personal habits to being on the phone. on computers and phones. And I just feel moving out of this is that's probably where the rest of people's marketing budgets are going to be spent now. I think they're going to start to pull off, radio, pull off on TV, and that's where I think that digital landscape is going to dominate.
Interesting. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, though, and propose to you that don't you think that's the case at the moment because people have just got more time on their hands? When they get back to being busy again, is that still going to be the medium where people are going to be looking at stuff?
I don't know. I think that the habit of wanting to pull up your show because it's on demand and it's convenient for them, rather than pulling it up on radio, is much more appealing than tuning in and listening to the radio, listening to an ad, and rather than listening to you specifically talk to somebody when they want at their own convenience. Yeah,
really good point. Now, to finish up with today, I thought I'd give you an opportunity to share a couple of pieces of advice to anybody out there that's running a small business or about to start a small business in these crazy times, from the things that you've learned on your journey over the last 4 years as a social media influencer.
Yep.
What tidbits would you pass on to anybody out there thinking about, creating their dream at the moment?
Yeah, so, if there is anybody listening looking to enter the social media space, I think consistent content is really important. Putting it out all the time, I think that really helps, and chipping away at it. And don't be discouraged by small growth. I experienced small growth for 4 or 5 years, and it just slowly climbed to what it is now. So I think it's important to be consistent. I also think it's important to have really good quality content as well. I know people who have got 200,000 followers, but people with 20,000 followers are earning more because of the type of quality, the type of content that they're creating. It's reusable. The brand wants to use it, and they reshare it. So that's something that I'd focus on as someone wanting to enter the influencer space. I also think as a brand right now, both big and small, I think it's really important to start reaching out to people that have, that are a really good brand fit for you as well. If you're a small business and you don't really have the budget, find somebody who is a small influencer that you can both leverage off each other, create a good relationship, long-term relationship as well. I think creating an influencer and brand relationship over a longer period adds a lot of authenticity about that influencer and using that product or using that service. So I would, as a brand, I'd start to create a kind of pool of people that you would love to work with. They don't technically need to be big people, but just really good quality content creators. That's probably my advice for both the content creator side and the business side. Yeah, fantastic. Shaun, it's been great having you on the Global Business Podcast show today. Thanks very much for giving me your time, and thanks for sharing all your wonderful insights too. I'm sure it's helped many people around the world. I'd love to get you back on the show sometime in the future so that we can talk about how this is all transpiring for you and whether or not some of the predictions we both talked about today actually come true or not. Oh, that would be a fun chat. It's been great being on here, mate. Thank you. Thanks, Shaun, and we'll see you again soon. Chat soon. There we go. That was Shaun Birley talking to me from beautiful Queensland in Australia today. Shaun is a social media influencer or a brand connoisseur, whatever you want to call them. Interesting insights there Shaun has shared with us about how it's been affecting his business throughout these troubled times and what he's doing to stay relevant and re-engineer himself for the market. So all very interesting tips. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're looking for more interesting insights from the business world, head on over to our website at www.thebusinesspodcast.com and you'll find all of our other episodes there, talking to business owners and business leaders across the world on what they're doing during COVID-19 times. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, reach out to us via our social media platforms and we'll have a chat about you becoming a guest. If you like our content, please tell someone about it, share it, and let's see how quickly we can grow this global community. I'd like to thank you all very much for listening in today. I'm looking forward to being back already next time on the Global Business Podcast when I'll bring you another episode from the business world. Stay safe and stay well, everyone.